What do you think AI particularly brings in table for both students as well as staff members?
Not to penalize the people who were trying to experiment. Create space for experimentation. Reward the people who experiment. This is the only way that we're going to adjust. Finally, that this is a permanent revolution. Well, the businesses are not giving us clarity because they don't know themselves yet. This is so new and it is moving so fast. We should be open about the use of AI tools that are enhancing our work and explain how we have used these tools to enhance our work.
Welcome to Unfiltered by Empowered, the podcast where we have unedited conversation with educators from around the globe. I'm Anshul Lau, your host for today's episode, and I'm enthusiastic for all things learning and teaching. In our podcast, we have conversations with passionate educators to uncover the challenges and celebrate the successes. Today, we are diving into a highly topical and crucial issue, the role of AI in shaping the future of graduate employability. We are joined by Ioannis, who is a senior lecturer in law at the University of Westminster and an associate lecturer at Open University, and will help us unravel how AI is influencing the prospects and the skills our graduates need to strive. Ioannis, thank you so much for joining us. To get started, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself, your background, and journey in teaching? And we would also love to hear what inspired you to explore the intersection of AI and graduate employability in particular. Over to you, Giannis.
Yep. Hi. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here chatting with you. Wow. What brought me here? Uh, if I can start with that one, what brought me here was effectively concerned that I'm going to be out of a job. Because when all the AI tools kind of broke out in the open a couple of years ago, I immediately thought this is going to be a challenge both for our students in adjusting to a new environment and also for us in remaining relevant and education and what we provide remaining current and important for the people around us. And things have actually gotten worse in the couple of years that we've been dealing with these tools. And now I can totally see us being replaced by the machine. And I can totally see our students and our graduates also being replaced by the machine. So this is what motivated my interest and my interaction with AI. And since I'm a lawyer, the integration of AI in the legal domain and what it means for the legal profession has been my primary focus. Now, otherwise, what I've been doing in the rest of my life, I've been teaching primarily contract and business law and company law. I've been coming from these directions of the more kind of market focused domain of the law. I never qualified. I have to give you this because I did my legal training a very long time ago in Greece, and I realized that I felt happier at university. So even though now a good part of my job is helping other people qualify, I haven't actually taken the step to qualify myself. My research has been in a variety of areas that had to do mostly with business, finance, central banking, investment. But to be honest with you, this stuff right here, AI and what it means, is way more interesting. And I think it's going to have way more impact, if we want to use the word impact, than the stuff that I was doing before.
That's really interesting. And you mentioned about your diverse profile and the engagement with AI. Do you still remember what was your first encounter with AI technology and how did it shape your view on the use of technology? Because when AI was new, many people were very hesitant to try out AI. So, what was your first encounter and how was that experience?
Well, I've probably been using AI tools without realizing it for a long while because I'm very engaged in social media and on YouTube. I've got a couple of YouTube channels where I share content with a wider audience. And the YouTube recommendation mechanism is AI and has been has this in the background for quite a while. So I have probably been through my social media algorithm interactions, I've probably been familiar of the way AI works without realizing it that this was AI. The my first interaction with what everybody now understands to be AI tools was ChatGPT in the spring of I don't know 22. Well, no, in the autumn of 22,
Yeah.
when it came out for public use, and I started getting interested in looking at it. And I took the plunge yesterday and actually paid for a subscription. So I've been using the free version of ChatGPT for
Okay.
so long that but I got so excited about the new 4.0 version that I actually paid for it yesterday. So now I've got access to the full functionality.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super impressive. I was even playing around with it in the mobile version of it, and I was just overwhelmed on how much it can do. I think website version is different, but even a mobile version application was superly impressive. And are there any other tools that you use a lot?
Yes, I have actually made a point of trying to use absolutely everything that I can get my hands on. In terms of producing audiovisual content, I have used a variety of tools to create animations and to create designs. So I've used Midjourney, I've used DALL-E, I'm using Adobe Firefox quite a lot. Through its integration with Adobe Express, I'm using a lot of this to create various visuals, even presentations now. Instead of using PowerPoint, I'm using Adobe Express and some of the sort of AI design tools. In terms of manipulating audio and video, I've used tools that actually change languages. So I've turned some of the video production that I've got into other languages using AI dubbing software that changes,
Okay.
translates what I'm saying in English to another language, and then mimics my voice in the new language, and then
Oh.
changes the way my mouth moves to make it match, which is great fun. So I've used for my podcasts Adobe Podcast, which has AI enhancement for the audio to sort of clean it up and make it more palatable to an audience, especially when we're not filming in a studio. Um, I use ChatGPT for everything I do. Yes, and now that's
I
why
can see the
I'm paying for
passion
it.
for your usage for AI. I think people have
Uh,
distinct views on the use of AI. Some would find like it's fun. Some are still hesitant to use AI particularly. So, in the context of a job market, could you give us an overview of how AI is currently influencing the job market, particularly for the new graduates?
Yeah, perhaps one of the ways to approach this is to stop focusing on the buzzwords and the sort of excitement about everything having the label artificial intelligence and start thinking about what it actually does. I think the situation we've got at the moment is that we have new machines available that can do things that we used to do manually a lot more effective. You know, if you're into cooking, you probably have a mixer, right?
Yeah,
Because if you want to
absolutely.
beat the eggs to make something, it's really a hassle to kind of have a handheld whisk, which, you know, I have one that I really, really like. And I've got an affiliate link to it on my website as well. But I do enjoy the hand whisk, but it's going to take me forever for certain things to make. So I'm using like a KitchenAid that does this way quicker. So I tend to think of the AI tools in that form. We could do probably the same stuff without, but the AI allows us to accelerate those tasks. So we shouldn't necessarily think of the AI functionality as giving us different outcomes. It's very possible that it gives us the same outcomes, but way quicker. Now, what does this mean for our graduates going out there? Most of the entry level positions in the workplace, especially in the legal profession, they tend to be simple but time consuming tasks. So, quite a lot of our graduates were hired by law firms to do the sort of things that one would spend ages going through, but they would be of relatively small value. Think of things like preparing a will for somebody, right? Nobody knows how to do this for themselves, and they're a bit worried that they might get it wrong. So they might hire a will writing service. The will writing service is using a template and populates it with information. It is not complex, but it is time consuming. Equally, if you're trying to do sort of invoicing, or you're trying to fill in information to populate a contract template for a relatively simple deal that one of your clients is making, again, not intellectually complex, doesn't require expertise, but it does take time. So an AI tool can actually take over this role of filling in this information, either creating or populating these templates. Great. So instead of you manually talking to the client and filling in the
Yeah.
template, that would be the same as you kind of whisking the eggs by yourself. Now the AI does it. It's like your KitchenAid is beating the eggs for you. Terrific. The thing is, though, what is the incentive of the law firm or some other employer to hire a junior person and pay them money to do the same task that now can be achieved by an AI tool? And I think this
Yeah.
is the challenge that we have at the moment, both our graduates coming out in this workplace and us as educators trying to prepare them for a workplace. Is there still a workplace for them? Or have all these previously time consuming but limited
Yeah.
expertise tasks being replaced by the machine?
I think that also suggests that there might be fewer jobs because if multiple people were doing some tasks and AI is making it so efficient and effective, so organizations might not need as many people in the workforce. They might reduce the number. So in a way, it also impacts on the productivity in a positive manner, but on the numbers of workforce people that they require, that might impact even for the new graduates who are looking for a job. The organizations might not need as many graduates that they required earlier. Do you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. And this has already happened. My contacts with the law firms are telling me that they have less need for paralegals or secretaries or support staff because quite a lot of the things that they used to do are now effectively and efficiently automated. If you look at other types of services, are you familiar with Klarna, the payments facilitator?
Yes,
So
I'm familiar
yeah,
with
when
that.
you try to
Yeah,
buy something in
yeah,
H&M or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
then there's one of the payment options is Klarna, right?
yeah. They can
So
also, is it, if I'm right, they also do it in kind of installment payments, isn't it?
yeah,
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 yeah.
that's what
I'm
yeah,
aware.
that's what they
Yeah.
do. By the way, I am not advising you use those because if you miss one
Yeah,
of your payments, then it ruins your credit record. But that aside,
yeah,
so these guys are a big payments facilitator on a global level. They recently announced that they replaced quite a lot of the customer support with AI bots. The consequence of this has been millions of dollars in savings because they don't employ these people in the call centers anymore, but actually increased consumer satisfaction because the AI bots were able to solve the customer's problems a lot quicker than the people in the call center. So
yeah.
the AI is costing a great deal of money, it's not free, but it costs less than employing the associates in the call centers, and it actually has better outcomes and better results in customer satisfaction in the end. So we do have a great deal of evidence already. So imagine this stuff has
Yeah.
already been out there for a couple of years, and we've got evidence already that is having an impact in the marketplace.
Absolutely. And in terms of employability, do you think there are some misconceptions that graduate might have about AI in the workplace?
I think we have a little bit of a disconnect in how students are approaching this issue. Some of them are getting the view that, look, this is new, we need to get ahead of this. And to be honest, people younger than us are probably way more comfortable using technology and all these tools. So some of them are thinking, right, we're going to get right on this and use it. Some others are thinking, if we follow this path and use it, we're going to create the impression, both to our teachers and to potential employers, that we're not hardworking, that we're lazy, that
Yeah.
we're using the tools instead of doing it by ourselves. Now, I think we've got better chances of the first group, the enthusiastic group, surviving in this marketplace because they're going to need to know how to use those tools. So nobody's going to be impressed by somebody who is putting an extra level of labor and effort to produce something a lot slower than somebody else. Like
Yeah.
when I was a graduate, because I finished my law degree from the University of Essex. I came out in 2001. So all the jobs at the time said you need to be able to use a computer, right?
Yeah.
Because we were at that level. And you needed to be able to use Word and Excel and to be able
Yeah.
to send emails and do all of these things. If I came out at that marketplace more than 20 years ago, and I said, oh no, word processing is not for me because I do things the traditional way. I go to the library, take everything down from the shelf, and I actually read them and I do handwritten notes, and then I handwrite my essays in wonderful handwriting and I submit them to my teachers. So I put all this effort into my work to do it the traditional way.
Yeah.
If I said this 20 something years ago, they would not have hired me because they wanted somebody who could use who could use word processing software because the people in the business were too old and they didn't know how to do it. I think we're going to face a similar situation now. Anybody who
Yeah.
comes out and says, I'm doing these things old school and
Yeah.
look at all this effort I'm putting in it, are not actually going to get hired, because what the people doing the hiring need is somebody who's on top of the new technology so they can accelerate their productivity.
I think you've given a very interesting analogy, like 20 years back, because how things evolve, how change happens, and how do we need to accept it. So I'm just wanting to even clarify on that. That do you think that the job marketplaces or the organizations are giving clarity to the graduates that what they require, do they want, and to what extent of AI usage they have in their organizations, and if there are any misconceptions among graduates that these are the requirements, whether we are meeting them or not meeting them, how can educators help clarify these misconceptions, particularly to the graduates who will be going to the job market sooner? Do you have any
The
suggestions or any
Yeah.
ideas on how can we do that?
Well, the businesses are not giving us clarity because they don't know themselves yet. The thing is, this is so new and it is moving so fast that
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
businesses don't really know what they need yet. And because they don't have clarity of their own objectives, they cannot communicate this to us so we can tell our graduates. I'll give you an easy example of how you discover stuff every day. Um, I was asked by my colleagues to interpret the data of our student performance, right? Because we had a raw list of marks that the students have achieved per assignment and then the final mark for the module. And they asked me to do a little bit of a data analysis and then to say how many students within that cohort performed according to each band. So how many were a pass, a fail, a merited distinction. Now, what I would have done in the past is that I would have looked at this Excel sheet, and I'm terrible at math. I don't have any Excel sheets. I'm terrible in all of these things because I'm a lawyer. If I could
Yeah.
count, I would be in finance or something. Um, so what I would do before, I would go through the entire list and make a note. And I've got, X number of crosses for firsts, X number of crosses for two ones, and all of that. And then I would say, well, 5 students got first, 20 students got to one, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of doing all of this, what I did is, this is an anonymized data set anyway, so we don't
Yeah.
have any data protection issues. I just gave the list of marks. I just picked that column and I gave it to ChatGPT and I said, tell me how many of these students correspond to these bands. Click, path, got it instantly, right? Copy paste into
Absolutely.
my report, and then I
Yeah.
said, create some visuals. Actually, I didn't even have to think about it myself. It said, would you like some nice visuals to illustrate these patterns? And I said, sure, give me some visuals. And then it created some nice distributions and stuff in charts that there was no way I would have created myself. And I also copy pasted this into my report. So I didn't even know that I could do this till I saw a pop-up yesterday that said, would you like to use an Excel integration? I thought, okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm the business person and I'm discovering this stuff every time I turn on ChatGPT, how could I anticipate what I need from a graduate to be able to use it? I'm discovering it as I go along. Equally, we are on the other side now. We're in education. So we are on a sort of meta level of anticipation. So the employer doesn't know what they're going to need. We don't know what they're going to need, but we have to guess what they might need in order to help prepare our students for a
Yeah.
future that is completely unknown because all this stuff refreshes completely every few weeks. So, how are we going to do this? Um, One way is to stop being resistant. Our initial
Absolutely.
reaction, and I'm responsible for this as well, because as an external examiner, I told the institutions that I'm working with, guys, your students are all going to plagiarize, they're all going to use ChatGPT. You can no longer give them take home exams. Bring them back into campus. And some institutions did this. They brought them back into campus and they're having them kind of type their exams in a computer room that is locked from the internet. I think we need to give this up. the initial resistance and the attempt to insulate our teaching and our assessment from the technology is definitely not a great idea. Because if we do this, we're effectively telling the employers out there we're isolating our students from knowledge of the use of this technology. We need to go the other way. First of all, to accept that this is there and we need to engage with it and we need to help people through it. And then to be flexible and creative in the way that we come across this technology and attempt to integrate it or encourage our students to give us ideas to integrate it into our teaching. Because we won't be able
Yeah.
to fully anticipate what the business need, but at least we need to be open to the use of these technologies with the students.
I think as you're suggesting, being open and being adaptive to the changes, how the AI evolves, it'll be really helpful for graduates as well as anybody, even educators. On that respect, I would want to ask you, reflecting on the broader implications, what do you think AI particularly brings in table for both students as well as staff members? Because my understanding of even working in higher education is that not many higher education institutions accept the use of AI. It's a gray area for many. There is no policy as such whether students can use it or not, whether staff can use it or not. So if students can't, uh, then students are challenging. Why can educators use? Because in some of the module handbooks, students have discovered that educators have used that. Even they missed seeing that I am an AI model. I've created this. Some people have missed even deleting that. So on that respect, more broadly, so what are the kind of implications that you feel that it's applicable for both students and educators particularly?
Obviously, we need to stay within the regulations. So, for if anybody is currently a student and is watching this, we need to tell them that the safe thing to do is to stay within the regulations. Now, the reality is that if they don't stay within the regulations, there's probably zero chance of us catching them.
Yeah,
Because accusing somebody of having used AI to produce their work is really a no-go area because you got no exact evidence. So it is very difficult to get, as everybody who's gone through some sort of accusation of academic offense, you need to produce evidence before you penalize the student. Being able to produce evidence, everybody knows, is very, very difficult. Even when we've got kind of copy paste cases of plagiarism, it is very difficult to actually put this into concrete ways that then we are entitled to penalize the student. So we have very little hard evidence of use of AI tools. The AI verification systems like the Turnitin offering are terrible and they don't work and nobody should be using them because everything now is going to tell you that no matter what you produced has been produced by AI. The reason is simple. Everything that AI has been trained on has been produced by us and now is reproducing it. So obviously, whatever it sees, it thinks that it wrote
absolutely.
itself.
Absolutely.
so uh, so if the students do not respect the regulations, there's actually very limited opportunity for us to penalize them for it. But you should be safe. If your regulations say do not use these tools, then you shouldn't. If the regulations are more open to it, then it becomes a matter of notification and transparency. At that, I think this is the way to go, and this is the only possible solution. We should be open about the use of AI tools that are enhancing our work and explain how we have used these tools to enhance our work. And I am trying to be very open about this. I publish every time I discover something and how it's done, I make a video about it and I put it on my YouTube channel. So recently I published a video that says, I'm using ChatGPT to mark your essays and to help me produce the feedback. And this is it.
Yeah,
So is this now like the Spider-Man meme that says, I use ChatGPT to write the essay, and the other Spider-Man says, I use ChatGPT to mark the essay? So it could be, but so long as the outcome is good and helpful, and we are transparent about the use of these tools, then if our regulations allow it, it's fine. And I think the only sensible progress here can be had through an obligation on transparency as opposed to any attempts to ban the use of the tools.
I think this also suggests that we should possibly change the assessment strategies. If students are using AI to write essays and even AI would be utilized to mark or assess those essays, so in a way, I think there needs to be some kind of thought process involved or some work around changing the strategies. And I think on this note, I must also ask you, That how does this change the traditional dynamics in educational settings, particularly with AI introduced in education and overall with everybody?
I think we're going to have to bite the bullet and attempt assessments that we were afraid to use because we think they're too difficult. So we have gradually, over the years, walked away from oral assessments. The reason
Yeah.
for this is that students tend to perform poorly in oral assessments because they get stressed, because they don't have the skills, because there are sort of language and accessibility issues and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if we want to prepare students for an environment that is dominated by AI, we cannot be doing these performative assessments, which is here's the same coursework title that I've been giving out for 20 years. It used to be copy pasted before, now it's produced by AI, and now I'm pretending to market knowing that all of this is probably automated. We need to move away from this into more meaningful types of assessment. I mean, I don't like the word authentic because the word of authentic assessment is the buzzword of the era. But in my context, you know what authentic has meant? It has meant multiple choice questions, which sounds ridiculous. But since our regulator is assessing people on the basis of multiple choice questions, the way we made our assessment authentic was to offer
Yeah.
multiple choice tests, whatever. But so let's not use that word, but let's say meaningful. In order to make our assessment meaningful, not protected from AI, but meaningful in actually assessing attainment, then we need to expand and use more project work, portfolio work, reflective work that is genuine, because also the reflection can be produced by AI, and to include more performance elements. Of course, in law, this is a great idea because being able to kind of perform orally is essential part of being a lawyer, but perhaps it might be challenging in different schools. Now, the danger with this is that it's going to depress student outcomes because they're going to perform less well in these more genuine and real assessments than the kind of copy paste or chat GPT coursework that they used to do. So
Yeah.
we need some tolerance from our superiors, from our external examiners, from the students themselves of a drop in marks, but a better reflection that these marks are matching competence.
I think you very rightly even mentioned some of the challenges that AI poses to the ethical dimensions in education. So, how would you suggest that? How can graduate navigate these particularly?
Well, the answer is transparency on the
Okay.
use of the tools that we've mentioned already. Now, there's a kind of nasty undertone to this discussion as well that has to do with bias and problems in the way that the AI thinks. And if in academia we're there to sort of challenge various preconceptions or to be able to debate openly about perceptions and understandings and methodologies and systems of thought, if we are over reliant on the production of things by AI, but we don't challenge the data set within which the AI has been trained, then we risk reproducing various perhaps negative elements or misunderstandings or partial views that are reflected in the production of AI. So a big kind of, if we're talking about the ethics of it, a big problem within this environment comes from the limitations in the understanding that the AI has when it's producing stuff. Now, this is ongoing. I'm not saying that it is adequately addressed at the
Yeah.
moment, but it is ongoing and everybody's aware of it. So it is going to be dealt with. The previous problem of how can we distinguish the product of a human as opposed to the product of the AI, that we will achieve through transparency.
But what role should higher education institutions play in preparing the students tackle these ethical issues around the use of AI? What do you
I
think
think
on
we're
that?
quite advanced in that. I think actually we have, in a bizarre way, we have spent more time worrying about it than we've spent time telling people how to use it in order to make a living. I'm very much from a business dimension. So
Yeah.
everything that I see around me, I'm thinking, how can we make money out of this, or how can we utilize this to make money, and how can we use this to improve our standard of living? So I'm less concerned about the various kind of meta issues that are plaguing the variety of my colleagues. If you've seen what is happening in the sector, for every seminar that says here is how we can use AI to get something done or create a product or a service that we can sell, you've got about 1,000 seminars worrying about EDI aspects, human rights aspects, ethics aspects. Um, so I think academia is already worried to death about all these meta things. So,
Absolutely.
and because there are so many people worried and working on it, I think it's going to be fine. The one thing that we should be a little bit more worried about is the sort of business implications and the graduate employment implications that all this has.
Yeah, absolutely. Even we can ask ChatGPT or some other AI software that how do we uh, help or the students tackle these issues or challenges, and AI would honestly suggest some really valuable and interesting suggestions also. I think we can
Yes, and it
now
acknowledges its limitations. Now it comes everywhere
absolutely.
with a disclaimer that says, be mindful that I might be telling you the wrong thing, and
Yeah.
sort of check before you kind of utilize what I'm giving you in the context of your work.
Absolutely. Even it suggests that please make sure that you customize the text based on your requirement. It also would suggest the parameters that it has taken to create that work. I think this has been really helpful for people who are working on it. It gives them some time for thinking and then applying that in the text that has been provided by any AI software.
Yeah.
I think we
Uh,
can now even discuss some forward thinking strategies based on your experience or your insight that you can share. So, as we look forward, what strategies would you recommend that education institutions more widely should adopt to keep pace with AI advancement and to help students in the future?
our response to this so far has been bureaucracy. So every university is setting up a working group which responds to a committee, which then advises another working group, which then issues a report that is then read by a bunch of other committees. So I don't think we can bureaucratize our way out of this problem. I mean, I'm saying this, and this morning I sent an email to join one of those working groups. But you know what I mean? Somebody needs to be working on the working groups that has actually tried this stuff. But uh, what is it? What is the strategy for addressing this real imminent problem that is not reliant on us getting in committees and looking at agenda papers? I think is flexibility on experimentation. So I think the university should have an announcement that says, we encourage everybody, educators and students, with at module, course, and faculty level, right? Everywhere, at all possible levels of interaction, to engage with those tools and try stuff out and then tell us what happened. And the key for this to work is that people are not penalized when the experiment doesn't work. Now, if, for instance, I'll tell you about an experiment that I've run. In order to kind of chat GPT proof my assessment, I
Okay.
told the students, instead of just looking at this coursework title and writing your answer, I would like you to listen to the podcast. And then after you've listened to this podcast, consider this question, and then structure your answer in a way that reflects back to the information in the podcast. I thought this was a fun way to kind of jazz up the task a little bit, so it's not simply them kind of copy pasting previous information or asking ChatGPT to do it. I mean, admittedly, ChatGPT can now listen to the podcast, but that aside, the results were fine. What would happen if the results were not fine? What would happen if, say, half the students had not listened to the podcast and had written random stuff, or they didn't refer to the podcast in their answer and I marked them down? If my results show a drop of, say, 15% on the mean mark in relation to last year, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to find myself accused in an exam board of having messed up this cohort of students. They're going to tell me at the exam board that my students performed less well than in the other modules within the same level, that they performed less well than previous presentations. That is the whole point of having continuous assessment processes that monitor student performance. The only consequence of these systems is to penalize lecturers who try to do something different if that different results in lower marks. So
Yeah.
this is the thing that needs to change. In order for the universities to adapt to these new systems and prepare students from what's happening out there, we need to have tolerance for failure. And this might sound like it's going to penalize the students who are the subject of this experiment. It could work the other way around. I mean, I've never stood accused at an exam board when my students did fantastically better than the previous year. I only have to answer questions if they did worse. So in the same way that the students benefit from the upside of experimentation, they should have some tolerance for having the lower, worse results out of this. So the institution needs to give the message that we allow and encourage experimentation. And on the off chance that this experimentation results in lower performance from the students, not to penalize the people who were trying to experiment.
Absolutely. I think in a way, even AI is, I'm not sure if that might be correct, it's also making the environment inclusive. I think I heard in a conversation somewhere somebody mentioned that earlier people used to use SMLs and pay for writing their assessments or
Yeah.
their courseworks. But now AI has provided a more inclusive platform that anybody and everybody can use it for enhancing their work or adding value to their work. And in a way, it's also adding the grades go up. So it's
Yeah.
more inclusive in nature now. And those who
If
can't
if there
afford,
is
yeah,
one if there's one highlight benefit of ChatGPT, and this is why I should have gifted them the money. I didn't even need to buy a subscription. The one benefit has been putting the overseas essay mills out of business, because nobody needs to pay some random guy across the ocean to write their essay for them. They can use ChatGPT to do it. Now that has been a great contribution to humanity, putting those scammers out of business. Of course, we don't want it to put us out of business as well. So that's why we need to
yeah.
kind of be engaged in a process that allows us to evolve alongside the technology.
And looking at what are the most exciting or concerning AI trends that graduate or educators should be aware of? What would you think of?
Uh, One area of concern is disinformation, because clearly it is much easier now to produce convincing things that then make their way across the literature, across the domain, and are fake. And I'm not simply talking about fake news or fake images or fake video. I'm also talking about fake academic papers that, because they're now mass produced with AI tools and they look very legitimate, they're beginning to make their way past the controls of the journals and finding themselves published everywhere. So if we have now a tsunami of fake that is just making its way through the system, it is making it more challenging to verify information, to figure out what is correct and what is not correct. This has got consequences both for civil society and our engagement as citizens, but also for the students as they're trying to learn and put together information. So that is a very significant problem. Um, Now, other things that might be happening have to do with accessibility for this technology, because even though the cost at the moment is relatively modest, there's nothing to say that once the technology becomes embedded, and if it is concentrated in few key players, then that these players are not going to jack up the prices. So currently, I'm not very concerned about issues of accessibility, because everybody I see has a better phone than me and a better laptop than me, right? And I had this discussion with the students. I said, we've got this kind of narrative of dispossession, that you guys are from kind of underprivileged groups and you kind of fought your way into university and somehow you all look like you're all right. So is it that I am misunderstanding the kind of messaging? Do you feel reflected in that narrative of dispossession or not? Or maybe because we're lucky to be living in the West, and even the poorest among us have got better resources than pretty much the rest of the world, we all have an internet connection and we all have a smartphone and we all have some sort of laptop. So access to these technologies through these means is easier for us and we take it for granted. But still, the rest of the world doesn't share in these resources. That's an issue. It could create a kind of north-south divide again because of this technology.
Absolutely.
In addition, if the price goes up, I mean, I paid $20 plus VAT yesterday for the ChatGPT subscription. If it was 200, maybe I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. So there's nothing to say that it's going to be $20 next year. Maybe next year is going to be 100.
Yeah, it even depends on the exchange rate. Like
Yeah.
it might differ in the exchange rate between pounds and dollar and what currency you're paying. That make a massive difference. And even I
Mhm.
came across an institution, I would not want to name it now on the podcast, that as a part of their fee, they're including the cost for ChatGPT or AI license, that every student is entitled to have a account as a part of their education journey, which I thought is a like step into looking to the future and preparing the graduates and
Yeah.
acknowledging that it's fine for you to be using it. And we would be similar, preparing you with the use of AI for the future
Yeah.
job markets.
What most universities have done, because they have a Microsoft 365 subscription, which includes
Absolutely.
Copilot.
Yeah.
Now, Copilot is a very useful and very powerful AI tool. It doesn't exactly do the same things with ChatGPT in exactly the same way, but if you need AI functionality, it can give
Yeah.
that to you.
It's
That
yeah.
that is now available through the institutional subscription to students and educators.
Yeah.
I just saw yesterday, this was not present previously, but it is now in creation. Chat OpenAI, who are the creators of ChatGPT, are saying that they have available an educational license for the institution to provide access to ChatGPT and the other products through an institutional subscription. Now, this is not something that they give you pricing on the website. You need to get in contact with the
Yeah.
sales team. But since it appears now in the pricing options, I think it is something that the universities will very soon go and investigate, because there's a great deal of demand both from colleagues and from students in
Absolutely.
accessing this through an institutional platform.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Institution would be looking into getting some more systems. And even I heard that ChatGPT might make the version 4 as a free tool once they go into the newer versions updates, uh, like in next couple of
Yeah,
months.
what's happening currently is that you can use 3.5 for free, and that
Yeah.
works very, very well. You can use 4.0 for free for a limited number of inquiries every day. Um, but if you want the full functionality of 4 and 4.0, then you need to pay
Yeah.
the subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. That's helpful. And I think towards the close, I would want to ask you a couple of questions. What
Yeah.
advice would you give to other educators or other institutions looking to implement similar strategies in their courses with the use of AI and preparing the graduates for job market?
Yeah. My advice on the personal level to colleagues is that this is not something that can be resisted anymore. If you're the sort of person that struggles to send an email, or the sort of person that kind of doesn't even use the kind of spell checker tools on Word when you're writing your essay titles, I'm afraid you're soon going to find yourself out of a job. I think we've run out of road here. The sector is going through a major realignment, and the people who cannot keep up are not going to find themselves with a job. It's horrible, but it is what it is, right? So everybody needs to now bite the bullet and get informed as to how these tools operate and what they are, and to be familiar with the need to educate our students as to the existence of those tools. Now, from the point of view of the student, I would say that the students absolutely need to be on top of this if they want to stand any chance in the job market. And yep, so the important point for the students is that, not as I was saying, I've done a couple of previous seminars and workshops where I was talking about the dangers that AI might take your job. The better way to present this is not that it's not the AI that's going to take your job, is another student who knows how to use the AI. That's who's going to take your job. So what we need to tell our students is, there is no avoiding this. Nobody's going to be impressed by you showing extra effort by not using the tools, as I told you earlier. You need to understand how to use them. And the message to colleagues in the institutions as to how to facilitate this to allow it to happen is, as I said, create space for experimentation. Reward the people who experiment, and try not to penalize people who try new things that don't work out. This is the only way that we're going to adjust. And Also, we need to understand finally that this is a permanent revolution. The way in which tools accelerate and change is not going to stop, at least not for the foreseeable future. So we need to have this tolerance for experimentation and change on a rolling basis. We're not only going to do it for 4 years and then we
Yeah.
worked out the AI and we're fine. We're going to have to constantly innovate.
Thank you. That's a very valuable and fantastic advice you have given. I think you've already covered the advice you would give to the students. That would have been my last question for you. But thank you so much. And before we close, where can listeners find more of your work or get in touch with you for further discussion?
Yeah, you can find me everywhere because I'm spread all over social media. So I would advise people to have a look at my YouTube channel. We can provide a link to that in the description of this video, perhaps. The YouTube channel contains a playlist that is called GPT University, that is specifically with videos on the use of these technologies and what they mean. Uh, Also, my podcast that is hosted on Spotify. The podcast is called I Glinavos Explains. So again, we can put a link to that. If you Google this, it's gonna take you to the podcast. The podcast contains a lot of these presentations and discussions and workshops and seminars that I've done about AI and what it means in the legal sector specifically. Otherwise, you can find me perhaps not on Twitter anymore because I'm stepping away from this, but you can easily find me on social media. Just kind of Google me, and I'm more than happy to engage
Yeah.
with the audience in any of those platforms.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas. And I think we'll make sure that we have put all the contact information and your YouTube channels as well as social contact information in the descriptions of this video. And that wraps up today's insightful conversation on Unfiltered by Empowered. A huge thank you to you, Giannis, for sharing your invaluable perspective on AI and graduate employability. It's clear that as AI continues to evolve, so must our approaches to education and job preparation. Thank you to all the listeners. We hope that discussion has sparked new ideas and equipped you with knowledge to navigate the evolving job market. Until next time, keep the conversation going, stay curious, and embrace the unfiltered side of education. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye.
Thank you.